3rd. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Take a quick roll call. We'll get to it. Bob Sheehan. Here. Lillian.
Here.
Rob Chauvin. Here. Jason Spiegel. Here. Jim Tromke. Here. Ken.
Yes, good evening, board. So this afternoon I sent you documents that should be familiar to you, as I think we were working off them, at least initially in the summer. And they were specific to the map amendment and the outdoor venue item. And I don't know if, seeing that again, jogged your memory as to how we were discussing that. But I think based on the last meeting, understanding that some warrant articles for map amendments, the expansion of the industrial district is the one that, we can at least continue to talk to and understand that that's probably something that the board will be looking to do for this upcoming spring town meeting, and then re-examine those two corridors for the other map amendments. Now, with regards to the Westover item, I did reach out and finally got in touch with the planner over at the Westover base, and they are going to be presenting their update to their AICUZ, which, as you recall, is the zone where the air installation compatible use zone. And so they're inviting, obviously, the communities that are going to be impacted and have those in the plan, in their joint land use study, of which Granby is a community. So I will, as I just got the invitation today, send that over to the board, and they're having something, I believe, on February 18th, which could be helpful to at least understand the different types of land uses that could be compatible with that particular area that's in that zone. As I mentioned at the last meeting too, the board may want to explore something similar to what the town of Ludlow did with regards to an overlay for those parcels. And that is specific to creating prohibitions on the different types of uses for any of the parcels that fall in that overlay. And so, so there could be an opportunity for the board to examine both prohibited uses, but at the same time, identify uses that may be appropriate for that. But the board was also looking at mixed use opportunities, assuming that they could be compatible with a AICUZ, as well as the other opportunities. So since the last meeting, it really has been a presentation of to you, to the board, of what was part of that meeting in the summer. And I don't know if there were any additional comments. I know that more than likely, if there's some further exploration of how that warrant language is to be written, we're going to want to make sure that we're choosing the right parcels or have the right parcels listed that would be undergoing those zoning changes. But that's just a comment about the maps. I don't know if there was any further questions or thoughts about the map amendments based on our last meeting and, being, getting familiar again with the initial discussion we had in the summer. I foresee that, as we get further into the process and identifying a public hearing date and possible language, there's going to be an opportunity. And before we had some technical difficulties this evening getting on, I suggested that maybe coming out to Granby to do a presentation with the board members that could choose to be in the room, and also utilize screen share more aptly for both the public and for the board members who can participate via computer. I don't know who's participating via computer at the moment. And I don't know if it may be worthwhile to go over those map documents, but if you're participating by phone, it may be a little more difficult. So I don't know if there's any comments with regards to the maps. The maps always, I think, going to be a little harder to kind of navigate over this virtual setting.
Okay, so until Westover has their presentation on the allowed use groups in their on the area that concerns Granby, why don't we put that on hold?
Okay.
So we have some, there's no sense going too far with that until we know what they're about their property. So let's not worry about. We should probably name that area that we're discussing. So we should probably have some sort of a description for it versus the other phase.
Yeah, we have. I think in the document that I shared with you this afternoon, we at least describe the stretches of road. Now, I think we're still figuring out the I think the board had suggested 300 feet on either side of the right of way as that boundary, but we can fine tune if there are certain parcels that would be receiving this treatment. But I think as the chair mentioned, after, for at least that stretch, which if you look at the document, was specific to East Street. Where is it? East Street, between New Ludlow Road and the Ludlow Town Line. If it was just that area or if it was the entire corridor. I think it'll be good to navigate that discussion after the presentation by the Air Force, the Air Reserve Base. But with regards to the other corridors and the other sites, I don't know if there is any additional comment with regards to that. If there's some more information that you think that the board needs, we'll definitely, as we've done in the past for other bylaw amendments, obviously prepare a planning board report and do that, process and provide the materials for review for the community. But I think, just getting that confirmation about the exact parcels and how the board wants to navigate identifying those parcels will be the important thing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that Westover area just that one side of the road, or is it both sides?
Let me quickly pull up that AQ's map.
Westover has purchased both sides in some cases.
Oh, so there's some houses or whatever in there that aren't included in all this?
Correct. They've chosen not to be purchased, but they still fall into that zone.
So whatever you do with that zone, it'll apply to them too.
Say that again, Will?
Whatever we do to that particular area, say New Ludlow Road, where New Ludlow Road meets East Street to the Ludlow Town line, it'll apply on both sides.
Yes.
Correct.
And Ken, did you say you sent something earlier today?
Yeah, it was those documents that you've seen before. I sent it at noon.
Okay, because I didn't get anything.
Uh-oh. I think we had this issue before, Lil, with regards to missing emails. I'll just make sure that Lil, it's the document that had the 3 different maps, the parcelized maps with proposed warrant language, and then a document that you've shared in the past, which was the agricultural uses small scale entertainment outdoor venue bylaw language from the 3 communities that we were looking at. So it's not any new documents, but maybe if you're able, I can try to forward this again to you.
Well, I had some documents from July.
Yeah, it's those documents. There was nothing changed from it. I just sent it to you under another, not another address, but another way.
You just sent it?
I don't know. So they're not new documents. I didn't share any new documents with the board. These are documents that the board has seen in the past.
Okay, and that one you just sent just came in.
Yeah, that was the one I sent this afternoon. Yeah.
I see that, but for some reason, it's out in La La Land somewhere.
So I don't know if the board, for those other 2 corridors, if there was some additional discussion that you wanted to have regarding that, or did you want to, because they were specific to map amendments. I know that the industrial, I haven't done the work to identify the uses for the possible expansion of the industrial district at the South Hadley line along New Ludlow Road. But with regards to map, I think just understanding which parcels we are looking at, or what stretch in the instance of the East Street between Pleasant Street and New Ludlow Road.
Okay, so the New Ludlow Road piece where we want to expand the South Hadley line property to industrial, to include it into the industrial zone, to the Morgan, well, just west of Morgan Street, I guess you would say.
No, I thought we were going to leave all those homes as residential. We were just going to go from. Okay.
That's what I'm alluding to. Just west of the residential area. So yes, Bob, you're correct. Mm-hmm. So that, I would say that's a go. We could prep that for an article if the rest members agree.
So would that be the article that is directly abutting the South Hadley line and the Chicopee line, which is like almost a rectangular shape south of New Ludlow Road?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, I'm also wondering about this, as I'm looking at the map, lot number 114 and the other lot that is between 114 and the big lot that butts the South Hadley line, Chicopee line. There's a big rectangle in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't see any sense in excluding those out. Although then you give frontage on Morgan Street. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you
I
give
would-
frontage.
I would-
I don't know about that other rectangular lot that's between 114 and the large lot. Where is the
Yeah.
access?
I would include it all. 112, 114.
The smaller rectangular lot and the larger one that butts against South Hadley.
I'd include it all.
So not those small rectangular ones. That run.
That are,
You mean the real small ones next to 22, which would be 20
Yeah.
and 18, I guess. I would not include those.
Okay.
no.
So what I can do for the board is identify those large parcels, and in a map form just a crude map to ensure that those are the parcels that the board, is seeking to support that map change. I think we need to determine 112, the ability to develop that type of industrial use. The challenge of the frontage over there.
Well, the challenge is frontage. Again, it's they can pull their frontage off the abutting lot if
Yeah.
for somebody wanted to do something with it, or appeal it for access.
Okay.
The more I'm looking at this, can almost, I know you're not, there's some pros and cons to over, but you could almost go from Oregon to the South Hadley line as an overlay.
Jim, could you repeat that, please?
I said you could go from Morgan right to the South Hadley line as an overlay, including the residential lots. So if somebody chose to do something, including selling their home or a lot to access the property for industrial purposes. I think that would be cleaner, especially seeing all those homes in there have I shouldn't say all of them. That area has a high water table there with issues with septic systems.
Mm-hmm.
So if they had an opportunity to sell to somebody that wanted to put something else industrial in there, why would we preclude that?
That could certainly be a thought, and when we do the public hearing, we could invite those residents to comment.
Yes. I would propose it from Morgan Street to South Hadley lines.
So Jim, just so I'm clear on this, you're saying rezoning from Morgan Street, actually the new Ludlow Road part, starting at Morgan Street over to the South Hadley line.
Correct.
You're rezoning it what?
Industrial.
Where all those houses are?
Correct. An overlay.
Industrial,
So pardon me?
an industrial overlay on top of the residential?
Yes.
So somebody could come in, buy up a couple of houses. Well, there's no real place for anybody to develop unless it's that land that's for sale just past the houses there. Yeah. I'm right now, I don't see the need to include the houses. I know it's nice and neat to make it like that, but I don't know if those people are happy there knowing that somebody could come in and just plunk something industrial in there.
Yeah, well,
And if I can,
go ahead.
if I can take Lil's thought a little bit further, the people across the street may not appreciate having something industrial in there.
Right.
You know, the residents. And like you said, Jim, and Lil agreed, it does make logistic sense to go right from from Morgan Street to the South Hadley line. But I think we got to tread carefully.
So that's why I'd like to get feedback here. I'd like to bring it up at the hearing because there's so let's say 22 and 24 decided to sell to industrial. Those two lots wouldn't make up enough property for an industrial given the setbacks and requirements under those bylaws. But if somebody wanted to come in and buy up the whole corner there and include 112 and 114, they'd be able to, which would allow those folks to be able to sell their homes for industrial. I'm only doing it, and I'm only bringing it up to help the residents there if they chose to do so, rather than preclude them from it and have industrial all around them.
Well, we can certainly wait and see what the public hearing says, or resident input.
I mean, the setbacks are different off the road. It's not like they can put a factory off the frontage.
If the water table's so high, they would have a problem putting anything industrial in there, wouldn't they?
Well, not necessarily, because if there was something industrial large enough, they could bring the sewer in. It's right down it's not too far from there.
From the South Hadley side?
Correct. I'm just trying to give them another opportunity to do something if they chose to do so.
The people that are in the houses there now?
Correct.
Okay.
And if they choose, and if we get feedback at the town meeting, they say, nope, then that's okay. We can cut it back to behind their lots, or stop it at the triangle lot all the way back. Do that too. Not include 112, 114, and that other rectangular lot there, the larger one in the back. We could do that as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out who the property owners are of the very large lot next to South Hadley and Chicopee, the rectangular one that appears to be, if you will, landlocked. I can't believe that it is, though, that borders Chicopee. Yeah, those 114, the rectangular lot and the big one, may all be under common ownership. I don't know.
Could be. It could be. And from what I can see in most of this, it's pretty wet anyway. So I don't.
Yes.
I know. I sit on the committee for economic development. We kind of had these discussions. There was some high dry land in the back, but it still doesn't meet some set that it would be required for it to build around some of these wetlands. So I don't know, but just because we put an overlay doesn't mean, an industrial park is going to come. Let's face it.
Right.
How many of our industrial parks in Western Mass are half empty? We missed our boat back in the late 60s, early 70s to rezone industrial on the Westover.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So I just wanted to, I know that there was a question about ownership. So I'm pulling up the GIS tool, which also includes assessor's data. And that large parcel is owned by Tan Realty. And the weird rectangle one that seems to be landlocked and has no access to any road is owned by Bedrock Financial LLC. But yeah, if that means anything to the board.
How about 114, Ken?
114, let's see. That is owned by David Harris. David Harris and David Harris of Huntington.
Okay.
Well, when we go to do this for the hearing. Okay. So
Did you say that? Okay, go ahead.
I said they'll all get notice hearing. So if they have any, they'll have the opportunity to.
Okay.
Is there any more particular rezone?
Not for myself, not regarding the New Ludlow Road area.
So now, is there any additional information on the outdoor venue, Ken, that you have into since our meeting?
Before we go there, if I may, this meeting on, I think, Ken, you said February 18th with loosely stated Westover. Is that a meeting that somebody from PVPC is going to be attending?
Because more than likely it'll be me, just because I serve as the zoning contact for PVPC, and I know that we've been working on we worked on the joint land use study. I know the planners from the surrounding communities will be hopefully attending, but I will be there.
So we could loosely stated use you as our liaison if a board member, or if none of the members were able to attend.
Yeah, so I just want to confirm that is, I'm going to send you the document that I received from from Westover. But yeah, if that is something that if the board can't attend, I'll be there to report. Just because I think it's worthwhile to understand, just for my knowledge and to assist the board with that particular location that falls in the in the subject area that they're going to be discussing.
Well, if you could forward that information on that meeting, that would be good. And
Yes.
any member that, in addition to, good.
Now, I assume that this is going to be a virtual meeting.
This will be a virtual meeting, yes.
Okay, so the 5 members of our planning board have to be careful that no more than 2 attend, or else it's going to have to be posted as a planning board meeting, doesn't it?
I don't know. That's an interesting legal question, in that it's a meeting that's hosted by another government entity, which will probably already be posted. I suppose that if the town wanted to, advertise this or post it to its own, for the purposes of, informing the community, they could. I think the town can do that and suggest in small letters that there may be a quorum of planning board members that do attend. And I think there's some language that we can suggest that there won't be any action by the planning board at that meeting. It's to be informed.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm ready to move on to outdoor entertainment.
Floor is yours.
So with the outdoor entertainment, what I shared with you was, again, a document that you saw back in the summer, and I didn't change anything from that. But, as I briefly discussed on Monday, it's specific to the ways that I think you can address these types of uses in your zoning bylaw. And obviously the example, which is the town of Southbridge, which was the community that I served as the town planner and conservation agent for prior to landing at PVPC. The town council adopted, this bylaw. It is a community that has a relatively dense urban center, but its outskirts are parcels that are similar to Granby. Large, very large parcels where these types of uses could possibly be used there. And I know that since this was adopted, they've got into compliance some of the parcels that there was some question about how to operate that type of use with the absence of that type of use in the previous bylaw, and now they're correctly permitted so that they're able to do that. And that was regarding a home that through a special permit that would be allowed to be used as a place where some commercial activity could occur. So that is the example where, the board can be proactive in identifying future uses for those large parcels, which more than likely would include parcels that were used for agricultural types of activities. And that's suggested by the bylaw that was presented, that section of the bylaw, where on these large parcels, if you could see some sort of petting farm on a parcel or a couple of those parcels, some sort of nature trail, open air area, those, and again, I think it's also important to note that Section 3 of Chapter 48 does provide agricultural exemption to zoning for similar uses, but I think the way that the bylaw has been written for the town of Southbridge, which I could foresee a permitting process existing in Granby, is very specific to thresholds that would need to be met in order to come before the board for either a site plan approval or a special permit. And that's suggested in, go ahead,
That's under section 3.
of your bylaw.
Yeah, section 3 what? I don't have it in front of me. Where you just said,
Let me just quickly go to your document.
Jim, I thought Ken was saying it was section 3 under somebody else's bylaw. Maybe I'm incorrect.
Yes, I was saying that it was with the example that section 3 of chapter 48 of the MGL. So that was specific to agricultural exemptions where some zoning, there would be some instances within the town zoning that wouldn't necessarily be, not necessarily apply to some agricultural uses on the parcels larger than 5 acres in town. But I'm looking at your section 3, and I don't know, Jim, if it was something that I said. In your schedule of uses, right? And those are so for the most part, just quickly looking at the land use classification for your schedule of use table under 3.2, which is agricultural. You know, the types of uses based on this example, and I'm looking at the first example, which is specific to agriculturally related uses that are permitted in any district, which is similar to the way you've defined those types of uses under 3.2.0 up to 3.2.546 or yeah, to 3.2.4. But then if you look at 1.1.3b, which is in the document that I shared with the board this afternoon, there are specific instances where if there are agriculturally type uses or other uses that are not protected under section 3, explicitly exempt under section 3, or even by your zoning bylaw under 3.2, that there are thresholds here presented that would require a site plan review. So something like, cider mill or winery selling product. And again, these are best practices from around the Commonwealth. Anytime that there would be parking for 20 or more vehicles, just understanding the types of uses that you could permit over there, which would be agricultural in nature, but would require a permit or an approval by the planning board. What also is in this sample bylaw is the 1.1.3c, which is the following uses are allowed only by special permit from the planning board. And that's a restaurant related to the agricultural use on site, and non-agriculturally related uses such as small scale entertainment venues or organized meeting spaces made available for rent for weddings, corporate picnics, birthday parties, and the like. And that would require a special permit. I think if you were to pick and choose, you could definitely identify this type of use within the use table. We would put that in somewhere appropriate, and then also define those types of spaces and then create the standards based on that, identifying that you had to have at least a certain amount of acreage or whatnot. But we could define it such as that. But I think that the way that this model allows for is that these are specific uses that would be required for special permit, and thresholds by which any sort of development on that parcel for those listed under 1.1.3b would require a site plan approval by the planning board. So it's understanding that your zoning enforcement officer would receive a request, and depending on that, if there was some sort of use that wasn't automatically exempt from section 3 of chapter 48, that you could go through a site plan review process or even a special permit process. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, there were 2 other examples that, whether or not the board wanted to get involved with permitting, creating permits for limiting activities. So events, if they wanted to get involved, if the board wanted to get involved with that. And then the town of Amherst identifies outdoor recreational use, which could be a majority of the large parcels in your residential single family unit zone, that with a special permit in a similar, so is an allowed use with a special permit, and you can create a special permit for those specific uses if you want to name them, and that would be a simple definition within the list of definitions, as well as identifying any standards and the permitting mechanism for getting there. So I don't know if there were any additional any initial thoughts or comments with regards to this. I know we didn't really have much in the summer with regards to this, but if there's something else that you think that we should be exploring, I think this is a good time to at least look for more examples, or if there's some fine tuning that we need to look at.
Yeah, there's another component to this, I think, is that although it may be the planning board can massage the bylaws a little bit and present them to the town for approval, there's another step that's involved with the select board actually issuing the permits for use. If the venue requires or requests certain things to be conducted on the premise, such as alcohol, entertainment.
That's correct. So there would be other components of this, as especially if it's this type of entertainment venue. As the chair mentioned, the select board should at least understand that they will have a role in a coordinated effort. Let's say if the town were to explore this particular type of permit or special permit, that anytime alcohol will be served or any other type of mechanisms within your general bylaw that requires select board approvals for something, that would also apply. But with regards to the planning board, it's specific to that type of use, to know that type of use would be allowed or not allowed based on the zoning bylaw, and that's your protection, your response or your role in identifying this particular use and whether or not it's appropriate for a certain parcel.
Correct. But it would also be good to understand what the select board would allow. So in other words, it, let's say the select board is only going to allow events take place with this type of venue in these residential zones, no more than X amount of times per year. And they may only allow a permit for a venue of up to X amount of pay. That would be important for us to know on what we would allow or could allow.
Yeah,
And
I think that there's some coordination that probably needs to occur with the select board. Understanding that if the town in its general bylaws has specifics with regards to events and uses of buildings and how many alcohol licenses or one-day alcohol licenses that could be issued during a span of a year, that would be important for the planning board to just be knowledgeable about. However, I think also the planning board, if adopting something similar to this, the way that this is written, would condition its approval based on, under the understanding that there would be additional permitting that would be required, either through the select board or board of health or whatnot.
Yeah,
This sounds to me to be potentially very layered. And I was originally thinking that maybe a template that could be used is how the select board handles the
Dufresne?
use, yes, at Dufresne's, regarding number of people and and I'm not sure of all the rules that the select board has, but I guess you can apply for a one-day liquor license there, or maybe even just a one-day liquor license and or a one-day beer wine license, and over so many people requires on-duty police officers, that kind of stuff. But it's, like I said, it sounds to be very layered. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all.
Maybe we should treat it similar to like and I'm just thinking out loud here, treat it like the Zoning Board of Appeals. Zoning Board of Appeals is reluctant to approve something without a site plan approval or deny. So maybe we present that we take it on a case-by-case basis. Someone presents to the planning board that they are looking for a site plan approval to accommodate 300 people. We review it and we either deny or approve, or approve with conditions that we would only allow 200 people. So now they have a site plan approval for 200 people for a venue. Then they have something to go to the select board looking for permitted use. And then the select board can make an educated decision that the planning board has approved it for 200 people. We can license it for X amount of times a year, or maybe that's how we, just like we do with zoning. Maybe that's how we deal with it. Starts with us. We determine what it's capable of doing, of providing, and then it can go to the other entities. And when we do it with a site plan approval, we send it out to the Board of Health. So the Board of Health would question us on facilities, and that sort of thing. And then if, conservation, so on and so forth, with the public hearing. And then it would just be up to the select board to see what they license it for. Yeah, we'll license it for alcohol for 200 people, but we think we probably would want some sort of supervision, or for traffic, or for whatever.
Okay, but when you're saying licensing, are you talking about each individual event, or somebody comes forth in the year 2021 and says, okay, this is my 8-acre parcel. I want to be able to do this. We look at it, we say, okay, and that's good for the life of the property.
Yes.
I personally don't think, okay, we don't want to be seeing these things in front of the planning board every other week. Next week we're going to have a birthday party there. The following week a wedding, that kind of stuff.
No, we would approve the site plan approval for the maximum allowed venue. Period.
Once and one time only.
Yes. Yep.
Providing that there are no changes to the site.
Yes. And then the licensing authority, select board, would determine, okay, we'll allow you to hold, 30 events a year, or whatever. I don't know how they do that.
Right.
But at that point, we said we approved it and we are allowing X, Y, and Z to take place on this premise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to the select board as the licensing authority, whether it's a car dealership, whatever, a liquor license, whatever's under their purview, then that would be up to them. And whatever we approve would give them some sort of standing on what they would allow, based on the physical capability of the facility.
Well, I guess I'm also wondering, as we're talking these outdoor venues, and Jim, you had mentioned Board of Health. Would they? I'm just trying to close any possible loopholes, or bring up any potential loopholes, I should say.
Well, I guess. Go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to go.
How would the Board of Health, would the Board of Health have to be involved every time to say, okay, you're having 200 people, we're going to require 6 Sandy cans. I don't know how all that works. And that's the unfortunate thing, is I don't believe any of us know how that works. And I'm not so sure that we can move on this without knowing these other intricacies.
So you're partially correct, in my opinion. So we would treat it like it was a restaurant coming to town, right? We would approve the site plan.
Yep.
When we do that, we kick plans out to the other department heads.
Mm-hmm.
Please, they'll all comment on what has been presented. Let's use the police department, for instance, or DPW for the curb cut. They make the curb cut's fine. They've got good access. The police may comment, yep, they've got good view exiting and entering the property, no issue. The Board of Health, they say they're going to need to show facilities. If you're approving this for 100 people, they need to show X amount of facilities for restrooms based on code. So we get all that feedback and we approve under condition that, you know, you have to have those things in place. And then the next step would, they would still have to go to the Board of Health for approval of these facilities to make sure that they meet code.
Mhm.
So, you know, it'd be no different than we have nothing to do with anything inside a facility. We just approve the site plan. Then there's other process. Where the board would go to the Board of Health. Select board would require Board of Health approval. Board of Health would say you need 2 handicap restrooms and 5 unisex or public restrooms to be used by the rest of the public, or something. I don't know how they do that exactly.
Right. Okay.
And once all those things, then the select board could say, okay, you've met this, satisfied this board, department heads, everybody's saying you're capable of and again, this is permit, any feedback or negative feedback from butters, and then that would be up to the select board to say, okay, issue you a permit to operate under the recommended conditions that all the other department heads approved. So I guess we just stick with what we know, what we're responsible for, and not worry about other entities other than their feedback.
Okay.
Affects this.
So would there be a definition or a use that would be different than anything that could be found in a commercial use, or would be particular to these large residentially zoned parcels where some of this activity would be happening? Do we come up with a new definition? Do we come up with a new term? I guess that, that's the question, understanding that if you're just to introduce this specific type of use and or have the ability to put a building on this large parcel for the purposes of having these events, or which would require other permitting from town, do any of the definitions that are listed currently in your zoning bylaw, are they applicable? And if so, more than likely they wouldn't be allowed in the residential zone. So it may be something where we can do some further research and combing through other communities throughout the country that have to deal with this. And it's not a new thing. So I'm sure that there may be some communities that have gotten it right. But I think that's just my thought with regards to identifying this particular use that we know is only going to be in these larger parcels and in residentially zoned areas. Because
I think there needs parameters around it that if they're going to do that type of a venue of 50 people or less, there should be some sort of threshold. If it's going to be 100 people or less, another threshold should need to be met. And I don't know if 50 and 100 are the right numbers, but there's a big difference between 150 or 200 people at a venue,
Mhm.
or somebody that's looking to do a venue of, you know, 30 people or 40, 50 people. And you don't want to preclude those that are just looking to do something small. We're not doing it. We don't want 100 people to not do anything if we choose to do that, right? That was,
Well,
that was
I think that, as Ken just stated, it might be worth researching further what other communities have done, even maybe within the nation, to see how they've been able to dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yep, I'm good with that. I don't bet the wheel if it's already out there, that's for sure.
And
Yeah.
and just quickly, because I was looking through past emails, and there is, I think, one thing that could be applicable and could be explored further for adaptation into a zoning bylaw, and that's specific to a idea and a use called a private event, and a private event venue. And those types of venues and uses would be in a residential zone, and would need to have, at the very least, the gross parcel size being at least 10 acres, or however, whatever the board would decide. But there are these specific location standards that could be applied to those uses, because that those uses would only be found on these larger parcels. So I think at the very least, it's looking at that type of language and understanding that, I think for the board to be able to possibly to adapt to this new type of use, it's identifying what this use would be called, defining it, and creating the location standards, that would create a permitting mechanism for at least crossing a threshold where that would be needed. Yeah. So yeah.
I think you just gave yourself some more homework.
Yeah. It's always nice to see what other parts of the country are doing, because this is a zoning challenge and this is a land use question. Because how do towns address these weddings, right, in the countryside, and because there's a nice barn, and I'm sure that many communities in Massachusetts don't necessarily know about these big events that may be happening on an individual's like housing lot. You're going to have 150 guests on, probably a larger parcel, but if there is that one time where you have neighbors that are like, there's a lot of activity, going on at this person's property. Should the board, should the town be, knowledgeable about that? And not just weddings, but all sorts of activities that could happen.
There's all kinds of venues like this all throughout Western Mass.
Yeah.
All through, and it's old farms that have been converted into these venues. So I think if you have the acreage, if the use area has setbacks, I mean, it's certainly not something that I would allow on would consider on a 2-acre lot in the middle of a housing development. But if it's a former farm, or something with, like you said, acreage, a minimum acreage with setbacks, so it has plenty of parking, and there's noise, nuisance, and I mean they're all over the place. So yeah, if you can get us some criteria that, I don't think we have to go all over the nation. I think we can look right here in Western Mass, even Eastern Mass, and see what some of the towns have.
I know that there are some challenges to this particular, for those types of uses where, at least what I know in Franklin and Berkshire County, there are some communities that, they seem to live fine with a property with a large barn, or, that has been changed to, these outdoor venues that have a lot of people in it, with very minimal permitting, with maybe a review by the Board of Health, and maybe a day liquor license by the select board, and not necessarily including a land use authority like the planning board or the ZBA to issue any sort of land use grants, land use.
Well, get us some examples. If this is something that's widespread and it's fairly easily to obtain, then,
I mean, sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind, and that's what I was going, how I was approaching the specific examples of communities that don't have a planning board or a ZBA reviewing these types of activities on those types of structures. But I think that at a good starting point for the Granby Planning Board would be maybe to identify some standards by which you could foresee some of these larger parcels in town, possibly benefiting from these types of uses.
well, you know what? Not only will do the parcels benefit from them, but in some ways the community too,
Right.
because we don't have the urban, the sprawl.
Right.
They're not developed. Okay, so you'll do some more homework on that for us, present us with.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what other members of the planning board think about the way this is heading.
I personally think we get more information and go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Rob. Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't want to see, these opportunities for some of the people in town that want to do these venues. We definitely don't want to shoot these down. We want some business in town, and as long as they're on some, some good acreage, I'm all for that. So I definitely want to see these venues go forward.
This is Lil. I definitely agree with everybody but we need more information on how other towns are doing it, just so that this doesn't get all out of hand and we miss something and it ruins it for everybody. But yeah, we definitely need something like this in town.
Okay. I think back to when we were doing the marijuana bylaws, and Jim so aptly put it, this is a living, breathing document that is going to need to be altered as situations arise. And I think we've got to look at it like that as well. Like that one as well. I don't think there's any way we can dot all the I's and cross all the T's in one fell swoop.
I agree, Bob. I think it's something I think that, again, we're not the final say. We present to the town, and the town's the final, the final say on it. But if it's something that puts some good parameters around it, protects abutters, and without handcuffing the operators, it makes it profitable for them and worth doing, and won't be any harm in it.
Right. So basically, the general, if I'm understanding this, the general consensus of the board is, yes, let's try to get something like this. Let's try to help out our property owners here in the community that may have a desire to do this. Yes, there's going to be rules, regulations, whether it be from the planning board, board of health, select board, conservation commission, whoever. But let's see if we can come up to a working standard. And I'm not sure that that's quite the right word, because each one is going to be site specific. But let's see what we can do.
That's right. And by setting the groundwork for this, if one of these gets out of hand, the licensing authority is and it's something that has to be done on an annual basis. The select board has the authority to regulate the frequency. That's so. I think it's a good, and there's always a way of getting it down the road.
That's right, Jim. And you bring up a very good point that I don't believe we discussed at all, but there should be a license thing on an annual basis, such as the common victualers licenses, the alcohol licenses, and everything else.
You know, it's outside of our purview, but it's not something that's,
Right.
you know, when that you're in.
Right. Okay.
All different than the other ones that they award. All right, what else we got? Anything else, or do we have enough tonight? I think Ken's plate's pretty full. We probably got him busy for a while.
Yeah, I wasn't able to do any additional research on the outdoor barn, or at least something that can be presented in a coherent way. I wasn't able to put that together. But I think, you know, based on our conversation on Monday, Lil wasn't present, but for the discussion about solar and the screening, I guess trying to understand what the context of the possible amendment would be. And maybe Lil, if she has something to comment about that particular amendment.
Well, that's a good lead in, Ken. Thank you. Just, I can do this really quickly and to clarify it a little better. So some people are concerned about the visibility of all this ground mounted solar that's allowed by right up to a certain size at homes. And some people are concerned about, you know, I'm driving by, I'm seeing this right there with the house right next door, you know, it looks crappy and all that. Now, the Department of Energy, Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources has sample bylaws for this specific thing, and saying that in essence that they should be located in the side or the rear lot line. And these bylaws, we would have to have bylaws in for small and medium ground mounted solar projects. The bylaws would say, okay, here you're allowed side or the back. It wouldn't say anything about what they have to plant for screening or anything like that. We wouldn't get into that. It'd be very simple like this, and the board would not even have to approve anything. It'd be out of our hands because it's allowed by right. But this way, it would have to be either on the side or on the back. And the state does allow for this and acknowledges that not everybody likes to see that sort of thing. I can send you the document that has that sample bylaws in it so you can understand it a little better. And it would just be up to the building inspector to say, yep, you're okay.
I would like to see that myself, Lil, if you would.
Not a problem. I'll send it out tonight.
Yeah, that's an interesting direction with regards to ground mounted solar. It's Lil brings up a good point about small versus medium versus large, which obviously the town of Granby regulates large scale ground mounted solar.